I want to give you this scenario. You're a catcher in AAA, and finally, you're getting the call up to the big leagues. The major league team wants you, and just for the purposes of this, let's say it's the Kansas City Royals, and the Royals are finally ready to call you up to the show. Years of hard work and sacrifice have led to this moment, and have led to the day where you get to step onto a real major league diamond and call yourself a big league ball player. And for your first ever game, you are asked to come in as a pitcher. Should be easy enough, right? I mean, you catch pitches all the time. You know all the pitches that there are. You know how to call a game and know what pitches should be thrown. So now, you're going to pitch, even though you're a catcher and you've never pitched a game before in your life. That would seem like a really bizarre way to make your debut, right? The first time you ever play in the big leagues, and you're doing it at a completely different position, which has very different responsibilities, and one that you are very much not equipped to play. Well, allow me to introduce you to this man right here. This is Frank Seurer, and he truly might be the worst quarterback in the history of the Kansas City Chiefs. Honestly, if you're a Chiefs fan and anyone accuses you of being a bandwagoner and you respond with, "I saw Frank Seurer play," that would shut them up real quick. Because my God, this guy was terrible, as you're watching right now. He used to be the quarterback for the Kansas Jayhawks in the early 80s, even leading the Big 8 Conference in passing yards in both 1982 and 1983, before going to the upstart and rival United States Football League, joining the Los Angeles Express, where he was quite terrible, throwing 10 touchdowns and 26 interceptions across 2 seasons, while completing just 49% of his passes and a passer rating of 46.8. Doing this in a league that favored quarterbacks and was, in many ways, considerably worse than the NFL. For some perspective on how bad Frank Seurer was in the USFL, because he was really bad, from 1984 to 1985, there were 30 quarterbacks in the NFL to throw at least 374 passes. That's not an arbitrary number. Rather, it's the exact number of passes that Seurer threw in the USFL over that stretch. Of those 30 quarterbacks, all playing against significantly better players, the average passer rating was somewhere around 77. None of them had a passer rating as low as 46.8. In fact, only one of them, Todd Blackledge, had a passer rating below 64. Frank Seurer was atrocious. It'd be like a player hitting 130 in AAA and no one else with as many at-bats in the majors hitting below 180. We're talking entire stratospheres of suck. After his time in the USFL ended and his failed stint with the Seattle Seahawks that lasted less than a month, Seurer ended up signing where he played his college ball, latching on to the Kansas City Chiefs. And as you can tell, things did not go well for him at quarterback. In 1987, he started 2 games for the team under the guidance of head coach Frank Ganz, who might be one of the worst head coaches in NFL history. And he lost both of those games, going 26 for 55 while throwing no touchdowns and 4 interceptions and posting a passer rating of 36.9, which is worse than if he did nothing but spike the ball into the ground on every single play. And Seurer never played in the NFL again after that 1987 season, meaning that he quite literally finished his entire NFL career with a passer rating below 39.6. I could theoretically walk onto an NFL field, take 1 snap, throw the ball into the dirt, and have a higher passer rating for my entire career than an actual NFL quarterback. I truly cannot stress enough just how bad Frank Seurer was. At the time of this video, There are 38 quarterbacks in Chiefs history to attempt at least 40 passes with the organization. Seurer ranks dead last in passer rating, and by a fairly comfortable margin, I might add. Passer rating isn't the end-all be-all by any means. No one's going to argue that Nick Foles and Matt Moore were better quarterbacks than Patrick Mahomes. And no one's going to argue that Chad Henne was a better Chief than Len Dawson, because Henne had a higher passer rating. But to see it laid out like that, yeah, it shows a lot. But what's crazy about the man you've been watching this entire time and Frank Seurer is that he didn't make his debut with the Chiefs as a quarterback, despite being a quarterback, albeit a really bad one. The first game Seurer ever threw a pass in, and started for that matter, was on November 15, 1987, against the New York Jets. The first game Seurer ever appeared in? Well, that was 1 year earlier against a different AFC East opponent, as we find ourselves at Arrowhead Stadium on Sunday, November 30th, 1986, for a game against the Buffalo Bills, in a rivalry that has only grown stronger and stronger over the years. At the time of this game, the Chiefs, sitting at 7-5 with 4 games to go, were trying to stay alive in the playoff hunt, as they were 1 game back of the final wildcard spot and 2 games back of the Denver Broncos atop the division. Meanwhile, the Bills were out of things already, sitting at 3-9. But not only had they been playing considerably better since Marv Levy took over as the head coach for the team earlier in the month, but Levy had a chip on his shoulder entering this game, as this was Levy's first game against the team that unceremoniously canned him after the 1982 season, in a firing that he felt, as did many, was completely unjust. Sure enough, Levy got his revenge on this day, as his Bills went into Arrowhead Stadium and beat the Chiefs by a final score of 17-14, in a game where Rob Riddick had over 100 yards rushing, and in a game where the Bills forced 3 turnovers and dominated the time of possession. And while there were many reasons why the Bills were able to go into Arrowhead and pull off the upset, one of the biggest was the inability of the Chiefs' passing game to get anything going. Chiefs starting quarterback Bill Kenney was quite poor despite being asked to throw a whopping 50 times, as he completed just 50% of his passes and threw 3 interceptions while posting a passer rating below 50. And while a lot of the blame went to Kenney for his poor play, and rightfully so, there were also a ton of moments throughout the game where Kenney was not on the same page with his receivers, and where the Chiefs looked like they lacked any sort of explosive threat down the field. One of the reasons for that was because they didn't really have any receivers. This man right here is Carlos Carson, who, as you might have guessed, did not play in that game against Buffalo. Carson is one of the greatest receivers in the history of the Kansas City Chiefs franchise, even to this day. Over his 10 seasons with the organization, Carson amassed over 350 catches and 6,000 yards, and made it to the Pro Bowl twice, all while having 3 seasons of over 1,000 yards receiving. As of this video, Carson still ranks into the top 10 in Chiefs franchise history in all 3 major receiving categories: receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. So that's the good news. When healthy, Carlos Carson was really good. The bad news was that in 1986, he wasn't really healthy. And it wasn't just one nagging injury. It was Murphy's Law, where everything that could have gone wrong for Carson did. During the first 3 quarters of the 1986 season, Carson suffered a bruised thigh, a sprained knee, and a sprained foot. He tried playing through these injuries, but eventually it got to a point where the doctors shut him down and figured it was best to get him to take extended time off so that he could be fully healthy if the Chiefs made it to the playoffs for the first time since 1971. So despite Carson playing the previous week for the Chiefs in their lethargic 23-14 loss to the St. Louis Cardinals, not even 48 hours before game time, the Chiefs made the decision to place Carson on injured reserve, meaning that he would miss the Bills game and would miss the remainder of the season. As Carson said, "It's disappointing that it came down to this. This is one of those seasons you want to forget about." And as head coach John Malkovich said, "We tried to go on a week-to-week basis. And finally, our doctor reached a point where he felt you can't go on a week-to-week basis. We just need to sit him down." And maybe this wouldn't be as big of a deal if it wasn't for the fact that Anthony Hancock, their former first-round pick, was also injured. Alas, he was, and now the Chiefs were in a dilemma. Because thanks to the injury to this man right here, and the doctor is finally shutting him down, and thanks to Anthony Hancock's knee injury taking longer to come back from than expected, the Chiefs only had 3 healthy wide receivers. It was too late to sign someone to the roster, seeing as the game was just hours away, and you couldn't teach a receiver the entire playbook and route tree that quickly, nor could you allow him to get chemistry with his quarterback. And obviously, you can't go into a game with just 3 receivers. Not only are there 4 wide sets, but if one of those receivers gets injured or needs a breather because they can't stay on the field at all times, you're completely and utterly screwed. So what do you do if you're the Chiefs and your head coach John Malkovich? The answer is obvious, of course. You let this man right here, quarterback Frank Seurer, play wide receiver. Yep, that was the grand plan. Have Frank Seurer make his NFL debut and make his first ever appearance on the field as a wideout in what would be, quite literally, his only appearance of the entire 1986 campaign. This was not a trick play or a trick package. If he was on the field, he was legitimately playing receiver. And it'd be one thing if this was a Kendall Hinton situation where at least Hinton played some quarterback in college at Wake Forest, albeit not very well. But nope, Frank Seurer had never played wide receiver before. Kind of a problem. He caught 0 passes in the USFL, which makes sense because he's a quarterback. He caught 0 passes in college at Kansas across his 4 seasons with the Jayhawks, which makes sense because he is a quarterback. He was a quarterback in high school. So if he ever caught a pass, since we don't exactly have detailed high school football stats from back then, it would have had to come on a trick play. And even if it was, it would mean that if he ever caught a pass in a competitive game, the last time he would have done that was in the 1970s. This truly was a man who had never played wide receiver before, and he was making his NFL debut as a wide receiver, partly because of poor luck, and partly because the Chiefs had atrocious roster management and didn't plan ahead in the slightest bit. And I don't think it's going to come as a surprise to you that there are, quite literally, no highlights of Seurer as a wide receiver from that game against the Bills. Because for this man right here, to say that he did nothing would be putting it lightly, as he did not record a single catch or a single target. Because as it turns out, putting a guy who's never played receiver on the field against actual NFL defensive backs is not going to go well. As Seurer said, as a quarterback, I know all the routes. I guess that was the logic by Malkovich as to why he was playing wideout. He knew the playbook and knew all of the routes of the receivers were going to run. But just because you know something doesn't mean you can actually do it. So if that was the logic, then that's freaking dumb logic. It's like me saying I know every movie that Christopher Nolan has ever made, and therefore I'm qualified to make a movie. It's like me saying I watch the Masters every year, and I know every single hole in Augusta like the back of my hand, so I'm qualified to play the course and win the tournament. It doesn't work like that. Seurer continued, saying, "I need a lot of work on the bump and run. They were pushing me pretty good. I knew they'd do it, but I'm not used to getting away from it." Yeah, no crap you're not used to it. Understatement of the century. You're a freaking quarterback. That's like saying a pitcher isn't used to hitting up and in fastballs at 100 miles an hour. You weren't brought on for that. At least, I think. And when someone asked Seurer whether or not he had a future in the NFL as a wide receiver, unsurprisingly, Seurer shot that idea down and said, "I hope my future is as a quarterback." Can't exactly blame Seurer for saying that, seeing as he never been a receiver before, had never practiced as a receiver before, and had been playing quarterback his whole life. And if you're saying this is a non-story, we've seen quarterbacks transition to receiver all the time. Look at guys like Greg Ward and Matt Jones and Julian Edelman. Well, those guys knew that they were going to play receiver and they were going to play full-time. This is apples and oranges. This was quite literally the only time that Seurer played receiver. He didn't play another game during the 1986 season at any position, and in his appearances in 1987, he played quarterback, which was his natural position. Again, he wasn't very good at quarterback, but at least he had extremely limited moments where he knew what he was doing. Can't say the same about wide receiver, which again, I'm not surprised by. Frank Seurer made his debut at a position he had never played before, and then he never played that position again. To use that common phrase about judging people, Frank Seurer was a fish making his debut as a tree climber. The odds that we see that again in today's NFL, especially with better roster management, some more flexibility, and the expanded practice squad, are slim to none. I don't think Fernando Mendoza is going to make his debut for the Raiders in Week 1 as a linebacker, if you know what I mean. Because on this November day in 1986, when Frank Seurer learned that he was going to make his debut and help out in the passing game, I doubt that receiving the call to play receiver was what he had in mind. Check out our live streaming schedule for the next few days. We're live every single day on this channel, whether we're covering a sporting event or playing GeoGuessr or just taking your requests. So make sure you like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single time that we go live and so that you can join this community. Also, thanks to all our members and our Patreon supporters who get exclusive perks like their name at the end of each video, members-only Q&A streams, and cool emojis to use on videos and during streams. See how you can join this community and become a member or a Patreon member by clicking the link in the description below.